Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Let me start by taking us back into the mid-'80s. It was at Carnegie Mellon, and David Nicholas, who was a graduate student there, his office was quite far from the vending machine, so he wanted to develop a technology to make sure that when he showed up there as any engineer, didn't waste the trip and be very efficient. And that's why he developed the world's first IoT solution, which was a vending machine. And since then, we've come a long way. The most commonly used IoT solution, which is deployed globally, is ATM machines, where we get cash from our machines. And at the heart of transforming any industry is innovation. And IoT innovation has brought us a long way from vending machines to now autonomous trucks and autonomous seaplanes and things like that, right? So it's been a massive journey. And we're here to talk about what do we expect to see in the future and where is IoT going and what are some of the new things that are coming. So investing in IoT is critical because that helps transform businesses. And whether it's optimizing performance or generating new value or transforming customer experiences, we're seeing a significant amount of investment that is happening in the IoT space. And what that has led us to is the impact of IoT is tremendous, and the numbers speak for themselves. By the end of this year, we'll have over 40 billion IoT devices globally, right? And over 50% of industries, especially in the manufacturing space, are using IoT. And it's even higher if you look at the automotive space. By 2030, 95% of automobiles will be connected. So that's how massive the impact of IoT is on the global industry. And at Amazon, we are using IoT, again, at a pretty massive scale. And here are just 3 examples of what IoT has done to transform Amazon's business. Whether it's robotic drive units, these are these little robots that we use in our fulfillment centers to move goods around. So we have over 520,000 of those, right? And that, more than 500,000. Same thing with our suppliers. When we have goods coming into our warehouses and the time it takes for check-in and check-out has also been transformed, and we've significantly reduced the amount of time it takes for these trucks to come in and come out of our warehouses. And you may have seen, if you've been to Seattle and some other airports around the world, we also launched the Amazon Go Store, which essentially, it's like an IoT hub of activity where every single thing inside the store is connected, and there are no attendants. So I was there, the first time I went there, it felt like I was stealing something because you just go in the store, you pick up things, and you walk out, right? And it just bills you because it read your palm when you entered, and then the bill shows up in your Amazon account. So, that is how transformational IoT is. And we've been using that and in many other ways inside of Amazon. So if you take a step back and look at what IoT is, right? I like to simplify things, and there are really 3 things that it comes down to. First is you collect the data, you analyze it, and then you act upon it. And the innovations that are coming down the pike, this decade, you will see a lot of innovation in collecting the data. We heard earlier about eSIM technology and eUICC. And of course, 5G IoT is another innovation that's coming, especially if you're looking at future-proofing your investments. And then on the analysis side of things, there's still a lot of innovation that needs to happen because we heard about data silos and what that's doing to some of the application, especially as enterprises look at deploying all of these things. And then finally, around the analytics part, I'm going to talk a little bit about generative AI and how that applies to IoT specifically. So let's start with data collection, right? In 2021, we had 350,000 connected eSIM-enabled devices. And that's going to go up to 14 billion eSIM devices shipped in 2030. Let's just let that sink in, right? If you compare that with smartphones, each year about 1 billion new smartphones are shipped. And 2030, maybe it'll be 1.1, 1.2 billion. IoT is going to be 10 times that, order of magnitude higher. And that's how big this industry is. That's how transformational IoT is going to be in terms of businesses. And this is where we feel that, or we believe, and some of the analysts also believe that the next few years are going to be a hyper-growth phase for IoT, especially because of the adoption of eSIM and technologies related to that, whether it's eUICC or iSIM. All of those technologies together are going to transform the IoT business. Another transformational area in terms of data collection is going to be the advent of 5G. I mean, yes, we all know 2G is probably the most relevant connectivity standard for all of the things that were connected over the past few decades. It's moving to 4G, but future investments are happening in the 5G domain as network operators like Tele2 and others convert their networks to 5G. And within that, there are 3 different areas of how 5G connectivity will enable IoT. One is the massive IoT, massive and mobile, which is NB-IoT and CAT-M. The second one is more around critical IoT, which requires 5G technology, especially ultra-low reliable latencies, right? Ultra-low latencies, URLLC. And the third area is broadband IoT, where you have devices that need to send massive amounts of data across the network. And so these are some of the things that are coming down the pike when it comes to collecting the data for IoT. Now, moving on to analyzing the data and looking at some of the challenges, we asked our customers, enterprise customers, about what do they want, and more importantly, what they don't want when it comes to IoT. And these are some of the responses that we get, right? Enterprises don't want just connectivity. They want to be able to get value out of their IoT deployments. They want it fast, and they want it simple, right? Complexity is a big challenge, even though it seems like IoT is a simple deployment, but there is a ton of complexity that comes into many of these deployments. And here, some of the reasons for complexity are just the different types of connectivity technologies that come into play when you're trying to deploy a solution, right? There is no one size that fits all in the IoT space. So you need to have multiple connectivity technologies. Again, getting data from all of them and making sense out of it, integrating that, making sure that it's done securely. And then, of course, how do you future-proof your investment? So now you have existing technologies that are there and devices, and then you want to make sure that whatever you launch in the future or whatever you launch now will still have the networks that will connect to it. And so all that is actually challenging the traditional digital transformation playbook, right? Where you have a lot of customers that are willing to try different things, but many of these proofs of concept really don't go anywhere. And the biggest reason for that is the complexity and the integration that is required to be able to make sense out of that data and make it useful. And from a challenge perspective, you have best-in-class ISV solutions that are available to each one of us. But the challenge is they're generating data in silos. And you could have multiple solutions in a particular industry from multiple ISVs. Again, they're all best in class, But the challenge is they only do specific things. And if you're trying to run a business, whether it's operating a hospital or trying to run a manufacturing unit, you need data from everything. And that is where the challenge comes in. And so this is what it looks like today, where you have data in silos from multiple vendors, and then the customer, the enterprise, is now challenged with trying to figure out how to make sense of their data. And many of them are leaning onto their IT organizations who are, again, very understaffed and trying to get operational data and making sense out of it is a big problem. And so we see the evolution of that in a more simplistic way, where looking at the next generation IoT platforms, which are built around data synergy. So we're not trying to eliminate the ISVs. In fact, they can do their own uniqueness, and that's the value that each of the ISVs bring, because they are domain experts in whatever specific field that they develop their software in. But as an enterprise, you need all that data to come together through some sort of gateway, and then put that into the cloud to be able to analyze that and then present it in such a way that it can be easily configured. And even within an enterprise, you need different data sets on the shop floor versus the top floor. And that kind of flexibility is really, really critical for the success of some of these deployments. Otherwise, they don't bring as much value as enterprises would like them to. So moving on to how do you act on that data, right? And we've seen generative AI is already transforming many, many industries in various fashions, right? Whether it's creating new experiences for their customers or improving productivity for the employees, or looking at insights, and even on the creativity side, right? Creating videos, creating pictures, things like that. So all of these things, we've all seen them. They're happening every day, and it's just amazing that we live in this exciting time where generative AI is transforming pretty much any industry you can think of in many different ways. And if you take a step back, there are three different major categories where generative AI is making a difference. One is around enhancing the customer experience, and the other one is around boosting employee productivity, and the third one is around optimizing business performance. And here's some examples of how generative AI is serving these three areas, whether it's through chatbots or through search or through document analytics or analysis or augmenting the data and optimizing processes, right? All that is great, but how does that relate to IoT? And what is the role of IoT? And how can generative AI be used in the IoT business? So we believe there are two main categories where you can look at generative AI applications and the use of generative AI in the IoT space. One is around the solution development itself, developing IoT solutions. And the second one is for the users of IoT data. And so let's look at how do you build an IoT solution, or what are the challenges in the IoT solution? It is a very, very complex, time-consuming task, right? Whether you want to prototype something, it takes a long time. You want to create configurations and firmware for different IoT solutions. All of these tasks are really, really hard, right? I came from the chipset business, and I know the semiconductor industry very well, and I can tell you that it is not trivial to create some of these IoT solutions. And so where generative AI can help is to be able to take all these complex tasks and be able to codify them and automate them so that you can reduce the amount of time it takes to develop and launch a solution that is sustainable, that's secure, and meets all the needs of the market, and do it in a phenomenally small amount of time. And that's where the value of generative AI in the IoT solution development space comes in. The other area we talked about is end users, right? How do we look at use cases for end users? And to that end, insights from IoT data, and we talked about that earlier, drawing inferences and getting insights from IoT data is also a very, very challenging task, is not accessible to everyone. And again, that's where generative AI can play a significant role in helping customers make sense of their data. So now that you've developed some of these solutions, they start generating that data, and how do you make sense of that data is where we will provide the next generation of, or generative AI will provide the next generation of IoT customer experiences. Whether it's looking at data from multiple sources, de-identifying that data, making sense of it, and giving it to giving business insights based on that data and using the right tools that come out of it. So that's how we believe that generative AI could help the IoT industry itself. And then the next thing is, looking at foundational models, right? Generative AI is based on foundational models. And from a foundation model perspective, there's been a tremendous amount of innovation that has gone in, where you look at the traditional ML models where you need data for a specific task, and there is a model for every specific task, versus in the generative AI space, where you have foundational models, where you are now using data to pre-train your foundation model, and then that model adapts to whatever tasks you want to deliver. And that's a sea change in terms of how quickly you can use AI and ML technologies in the generative AI world. And however, foundation models alone cannot execute tasks, right? And as an enterprise or as a telco, you need to be able to have your data secure and not get into an open source situation where you're training an open source model with your data and then inadvertently compromising the security of your solution. And so that's where you need to look at generative AI and especially foundational models. So if you look at AWS and how we are approaching Gen AI, yesterday we launched Amazon Q, which is very similar to what ChatGPT can do. It's our generative AI solution, and we are actually demonstrating it in the innovation showcase. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And our approach is very different, where we actually take your data and help you pick the right foundation model for whatever task and whatever industry you're working in, and be able to train that with small amounts of data from your enterprise, but also do it in a secure way so that whatever training you did does not go back into the public domain. And that's where we believe the fine-tuning of generative AI models and foundation models is critical to do it in a secure way. And so we are at an inflection point in the industry where generative AI has now gone into the next level of machine learning innovation. And if you look at these 40 billion connected devices, they're going to generate 175 zettabytes of data by 2025. Just imagine the scale of that data and what you can do with it. Right? So we believe your data is your differentiator. And how you use it to transform your business is going to help you succeed with IoT and helping you take that data and transform your business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajay. It was very insightful and very interesting. For those of you online, I think I need to explain you something, because what you have been talking about, the generative AI and the Amazon Q and stuff, we actually have this showcase which we have done with our friends from AWS here today at IoT Talks. And basically you just feed the information, the data about how to use the IoT and what kind of questions could be done, and it just gives the fantastic answers. So if some of you have still not seen the AWS booth, definitely please do that. Joanna, I think we have a lot of questions from digital, or do we?
Yes, we do, of course. And they're reaching out. Thank you for a very nice presentation. And we have Herman, which I also think is from Germany. He says that AWS is doing a lot of development around the IoT. But how would the AWS offering look like in 3 years?
So if you look at our investment in IoT, it's a multi-year effort. And we will continue to develop new solutions. Now, I just talked about how we are helping our developers use generative AI to develop the next generation IoT solutions and do them faster. And that's not a point-in-time solution, right? It continues to evolve. So just like with everything that we do at AWS, we will continue to invest and develop new technologies and new solutions that will make the adoption of IoT and the use of IoT easier for our customers.
Perfect. We have a future which is very, very exciting ahead of us. Let's give it up for Ajay, Rane again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.